The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Elderwood Palace as Captain Marcus Rodriguez made his routine rounds through the royal quarters. His heavy boots echoed through the empty corridors, creating a rhythm that had become as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. For 15 years he had walked these halls, protecting the royal family with unwavering dedication and honor. Marcus was not an ordinary palace guard. Standing tall at 6 feet 2 inches with broad shoulders and piercing green eyes, he commanded respect from every person who crossed his path. His dark hair, now touched with silver at the temples, spoke of years spent in service to the crown. The other guards looked up to him not just because of his rank, but because of his integrity and fairness. He treated everyone with respect, from the lowest kitchen servant to the highest noble in the court. Today felt different somehow. There was tension in the air that Marcus couldn't quite place. The servants whispered more quietly than usual, and even the birds in the palace gardens seemed to sing with less enthusiasm. As he walked past the ornate tapestries that lined the walls, Marcus noticed small details that others might miss. A flower arrangement slightly out of place, footprints in areas where they shouldn't be, the faint scent of an unfamiliar perfume lingering in the hallway. The palace had been buzzing with activity lately. Princess Camilla, the king's youngest daughter, had returned from her studies abroad just 3 months ago. At 25, she was considered one of the most beautiful women in the kingdom, with flowing auburn hair and eyes the color of sapphires. But more than her beauty, it was her intelligence and kindness that drew people to her. She spoke 4 languages fluently, could debate politics with the most seasoned advisors, and never failed to remember the names of every palace staff member. Marcus had watched Camilla grow from a spirited child into a remarkable young woman. He remembered teaching her how to hold a sword when she was just 10 years old, much to her governess's horror. Even then, she had shown determination and courage that impressed him. Now, as an adult, she carried herself with grace and confidence. But Marcus had noticed subtle changes in her behavior recently. The princess had been spending more time in her private chambers, often requesting that meals be brought to her room instead of dining in the great hall with the family. She had also been taking long walks in the palace gardens at unusual hours, sometimes very early in the morning or late in the evening when most people were asleep. These changes might seem innocent to others, but Marcus's trained eye caught every deviation from normal patterns. As he approached the wing where the royal family's private chambers were located, Marcus heard the sound of hurried footsteps coming from around the corner. A young maid named Elena appeared, carrying a silver tray with what appeared to be breakfast items. Her face was flushed and she seemed nervous when she saw the captain approaching. "Good morning, Captain Rodriguez," Elena said, attempting a smile while balancing the tray carefully. "I'm just bringing Princess Camilla her morning tea and pastries." Marcus nodded politely, but something about the girl's demeanor struck him as odd. Elena had been working in the palace for 2 years, and he had never seen her look so anxious. Her hands were trembling slightly, and she kept glancing back toward the direction she had come from as if she were afraid of being followed. "Is everything all right, Elena?" Marcus asked in his gentle but authoritative voice. "You seem troubled this morning." "Oh no, sir, everything is fine," Elena replied quickly, perhaps too quickly. "Just trying to make sure the princess's breakfast stays warm, that's all." She's been very particular about her morning routine lately. After Elena hurried away, Marcus continued his patrol, but his mind kept returning to the strange encounter. His instincts, sharpened by years of military training and palace security work, were telling him that something was not quite right. He had learned long ago to trust these feelings, as they had saved his life and the lives of others many times before. The political climate in the kingdom had been tense recently. King Edward was aging and there were whispers about succession and potential arranged marriages for his children. Princess Camilla, being unmarried and of age, was often the subject of these discussions. Several neighboring kingdoms had already sent representatives to discuss potential alliances through marriage, but Camilla had shown little interest in any of the proposed suitors. Marcus understood the pressure that royal families faced. Marriage was rarely about love for people in their position. It was about political strategy, economic benefits, and strengthening alliances, but he also knew Camilla well enough to understand that she was not the type of person who would easily accept a life without genuine affection and companionship. As he walked past a large window, overlooking the gardens, Marcus paused to observe the landscape below. The gardens were immaculately maintained, with colorful flower beds arranged in intricate patterns and winding paths that led to secluded alcoves and romantic gazebos. It was in these gardens that many royal courtships had begun over the centuries, and Marcus wondered if perhaps Princess Camilla had found someone who had captured her heart. The thought both pleased and concerned him. If Camilla had found love, he would be happy for her, as he had always believed that everyone deserved to experience genuine affection and companionship. However, if her romantic interest was someone deemed unsuitable by the royal court, it could create serious complications for both the princess and the kingdom. Marcus completed his morning rounds and returned to his office in the guard tower. The room was simple but functional, with maps of the palace and surrounding grounds covering the walls, along with schedules, duty rosters, and communication protocols. His desk was neat and organized, reflecting his methodical approach to his responsibilities. As he sat down to review the daily reports from his subordinates, Marcus made a mental note to pay closer attention to the activities around Princess Camilla's chambers over the next few days. He had no intention of spying on the royal family, but his duty was to protect them, and sometimes that meant being aware of situations that could potentially put them at risk. The day passed without any other unusual incidents, but as evening approached, Marcus found himself thinking more and more about the morning's strange encounter with Elena and the subtle changes he had observed in Princess Camilla's behavior. Something was definitely happening within the palace walls, and his experience told him that it would not remain hidden for much longer. 3 days had passed since Marcus first noticed the unusual behavior around Princess Camilla's chambers, and his suspicions had only grown stronger. The princess continued to spend most of her time in her private quarters, and the servants attending to her seemed increasingly nervous whenever they encountered other palace staff. On this particular evening, Marcus was conducting his final security check before the night shift took over. The palace was settling into its quiet nighttime rhythm, with most of the royal family retired to their chambers and the majority of servants finished with their daily duties. The only sounds were the soft footsteps of night guards making their patrols and the occasional creak of the old building settling. As Marcus walked through the corridor leading to the royal wing, he noticed a faint light coming from underneath Princess Camilla's chamber door. This was unusual, as the princess typically retired early and preferred to read by the large windows during daylight hours, rather than strain her eyes with candlelight. The light was flickering in an odd pattern, not like the steady glow of a reading lamp or the gentle flicker of a fireplace. Curiosity and concern prompted Marcus to move closer to investigate. As he approached the heavy wooden door, he could hear the soft murmur of voices from within the chamber. At first he assumed that perhaps one of the princess's ladies-in-waiting was keeping her company, but as he listened more carefully, he realized that one of the voices was distinctly masculine. Marcus felt his heart rate increase as the implications of this discovery began to sink in. A man in the princess's private chambers at this hour was strictly forbidden by palace protocol, and could create a scandal that would rock the entire kingdom. His duty as captain of the guard required him to investigate any potential security breach, but his personal affection for Princess Camilla made him hesitate. The voices from within the chamber were speaking too quietly for Marcus to make out specific words, but the tone was intimate and affectionate. There were soft laughter and what sounded like terms of endearment being exchanged. Marcus found himself facing a dilemma that challenged both his professional obligations and his personal loyalties. Standing in the dimly lit corridor, Marcus remembered all the times he had interacted with Princess Camilla over the years. She had always been kind to him, treating him with respect and genuine interest in his well-being. When his wife had died in childbirth 5 years ago, along with their unborn child, Camilla had been one of the few people in the palace who had offered him genuine comfort and support during his darkest period. The princess had personally arranged for flowers to be placed on his wife's grave every month and had made sure that Marcus received extra time off to grieve properly. She had never made him feel like his pain was an inconvenience or something that should be hidden away. For this kindness, Marcus felt a deep sense of loyalty and protectiveness toward her that went beyond his professional duties. But now, as he stood outside her chamber door listening to evidence of what was clearly a secret romantic relationship, Marcus struggled with what action to take. His training and position demanded that he report any security breach immediately to his superiors, and ultimately to the king. However, his heart told him that Princess Camilla deserved the chance to find happiness and love, even if it meant breaking certain royal protocols. The sound of movement from within the chamber interrupted Marcus's internal debate. The voices had stopped, and he could hear what sounded like someone moving toward the door. Quickly and quietly, Marcus stepped back into the shadows of an alcove just as the chamber door opened slightly. Through the narrow opening, Marcus caught a glimpse of a figure he did not immediately recognize. The man was tall and well-dressed, with dark hair and refined features that suggested noble birth, or at least upper-class background. He was speaking softly to someone inside the chamber, presumably Princess Camilla, and his voice carried the educated accent of someone who had received a proper courtly education. "Until tomorrow evening, my love," the mysterious man whispered. "The hours until I see you again will feel like an eternity." Princess Camilla's voice responded from within the chamber, though Marcus could not see her from his hiding position. "Be careful, Thomas. The palace has many eyes and ears, and I fear we are taking too great a risk with these meetings. I know the dangers, Camilla, but I cannot stay away from you. What we have found together is worth any risk," Thomas replied, his voice filled with emotion and conviction. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat as he heard the exchange. The obvious love and affection between the two young people was undeniable, but so were the potential consequences of their secret relationship. If Thomas was not someone approved by the royal court for a potential marriage alliance, this romance could result in serious political complications for the kingdom. The man named Thomas carefully closed the chamber door and began walking down the corridor in Marcus's direction. The captain pressed himself further back into the shadows, hoping to remain undetected while also trying to get a better look at the mysterious visitor. As Thomas passed by the alcove, Marcus was able to see his face more clearly in the moonlight streaming through a nearby window. To his surprise, Marcus recognized the young man. Thomas Whitmore was the second son of Lord Christopher Whitmore, a wealthy nobleman who owned vast estates in the northern provinces of the kingdom. The Whitmore family had a long history of loyalty to the crown and had provided military and financial support during several conflicts over the past decades. However, Thomas was not considered a suitable marriage prospect for a princess because he was not heir to his father's title and lands. That inheritance would go to his older brother, making Thomas essentially a nobleman without significant political or economic value in terms of royal marriage alliances. While he was well-educated, charming, and came from a respectable family, he would not be able to offer the kind of strategic benefits that royal marriages typically required. Marcus watched as Thomas made his way down the corridor, moving with the confidence of someone familiar with the palace layout. This suggested that his visits to Princess Camilla were not a recent development, but had been occurring regularly for some time. The ease with which he navigated the building and the familiarity with which he and Camilla had spoken indicated a well-established relationship. After Thomas disappeared around a corner, Marcus remained in the shadows for several more minutes, processing what he had witnessed and trying to decide on his next course of action. The rational part of his mind told him that he should report the security breach immediately, but his emotional connection to Princess Camilla made him want to protect her happiness, even if it meant bending the rules. As he finally emerged from the alcove and continued his evening patrol, Marcus realized that he had stumbled upon something that could change the course of Princess Camilla's life and potentially affect the political stability of the entire kingdom. The weight of this knowledge settled heavily on his shoulders as he walked through the quiet palace corridors, knowing that whatever decision he made in the coming days would have far-reaching consequences for everyone involved. The following morning brought unexpected complications that Marcus had not anticipated. As he arrived at his office to begin his daily duties, he found Sir Edmund Blackwood, the king's chief advisor, waiting for him with a stern expression on his weathered face. Sir Edmund was known throughout the palace for his sharp intelligence, unwavering loyalty to the crown, and his ability to uncover secrets that others preferred to keep hidden. "Captain Rodriguez, we need to discuss a matter of great importance," Sir Edmund said without preamble, his piercing gray eyes fixed on Marcus with uncomfortable intensity. There have been reports of unusual activities in the royal wing of the palace, and His Majesty is concerned about potential security breaches. Marcus felt his stomach tighten, but he maintained his composure and professional demeanor. Of course, Sir Edmund. I am always available to discuss security matters with you and His Majesty. What specific concerns have been brought to your attention? Sir Edmund moved to close the office door before continuing, a gesture that indicated the sensitive nature of their conversation. Several servants have reported seeing unfamiliar figures in areas where they should not be, particularly during evening hours. There have also been whispers about secret meetings and clandestine activities involving members of the royal family. The chief advisor's words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Though he managed to keep his expression neutral, it seemed that the secret romance between Princess Camilla and Thomas Whitmore had not gone completely unnoticed by others in the palace. The servant network that kept the royal household functioning was also an efficient source of gossip and information, making it nearly impossible to keep secrets for extended periods. I have not received any formal reports of security breaches from my guards, Marcus replied carefully, choosing his words with precision. However, I will certainly increase our vigilance and conduct a thorough investigation of any areas where unauthorized personnel might have gained access. Sir Edmund studied Marcus's face intently, as if trying to read the thoughts behind his carefully controlled expression. Captain, you have served this royal family with distinction for many years, and your loyalty has never been questioned. However, I must remind you that your first duty is to the crown and the stability of the kingdom, not to personal feelings or sympathies you might have for individual members of the royal family. The warning was clear, and Marcus understood that Sir Edmund suspected he might know more than he was revealing. The chief advisor had not reached his position of power and influence by being naive or easily deceived. His network of informants throughout the palace was extensive, and he had a talent for piecing together fragments of information to reveal larger truths. I understand my duties completely, Sir Edmund, Marcus responded with quiet dignity. My loyalty to the crown and my commitment to protecting the royal family have never wavered, and they never will. After Sir Edmund left his office, Marcus sat alone for several minutes, contemplating the increasingly complex situation he found himself facing. The knowledge he possessed about Princess Camilla's secret relationship felt like a heavy burden that was growing more difficult to bear with each passing hour. He knew that other people in the palace were beginning to notice unusual activities, which meant that the secret would not remain hidden much longer. Later that morning, as Marcus conducted his routine inspection of the palace grounds, he encountered Princess Camilla walking alone in the rose garden. She was dressed in a simple blue gown that complemented her auburn hair, and she appeared lost in thought as she moved slowly among the blooming flowers. When she noticed Marcus approaching, her face brightened with a genuine smile that reminded him of the spirited young girl he had known years earlier. Good morning, Captain Rodriguez, Camilla said warmly. It's such a beautiful day, isn't it? The roses are particularly lovely this year. Good morning, Your Highness, Marcus replied with a respectful bow. Indeed, the gardens are magnificent. I hope you're enjoying your walk. As they spoke, Marcus noticed subtle signs of stress in the princess's demeanor. Despite her cheerful words and bright smile, there were faint shadows under her eyes that suggested she had not been sleeping well, and her hands showed a slight tremor that indicated nervousness or anxiety. The weight of maintaining a secret romance was clearly taking its toll on her emotional and physical well-being. Captain, may I speak with you privately? Camilla asked, glancing around to ensure they were not being observed by other palace staff. There is something I would like to discuss with you. Marcus felt his heart rate increase, wondering if the princess intended to confide in him about her relationship with Thomas Whitmore. If she chose to trust him with her secret, it would put him in an even more difficult position than he was already facing. However, he could not refuse a direct request from a member of the royal family. Of course, Your Highness, you may speak freely with me about any matter that concerns you. Camilla led him to a secluded bench beneath a large oak tree, where their conversation would not be easily overheard. She sat down gracefully and gestured for Marcus to join her, a gesture that demonstrated her respect for him as both a person and a trusted member of the palace staff. Captain, you have known me since I was a child, and I have always felt that you understood me better than most people in this palace, Camilla began, her voice soft but earnest. You have seen me grow from a rebellious little girl into the woman I am today, and I believe you genuinely care about my happiness and well-being." Marcus nodded, feeling touched by her words but also increasingly apprehensive about where the conversation was heading. "Your Highness, it has been my privilege to watch you grow into such a remarkable young woman. Your intelligence, kindness, and strength of character have always impressed me greatly." "Thank you for saying that," Camilla replied, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Captain, I find myself in a situation that is both wonderful and terrifying. I have discovered something that brings me more joy than I ever thought possible. But I fear that this happiness may come at a cost that others will not be willing to accept." The princess paused for a moment, seeming to gather her courage before continuing. "I have fallen in love, Captain. Deeply and completely in love with someone who makes me feel alive and understood in ways I never imagined possible. But I fear that this love may not be acceptable to my family or to the kingdom." Marcus felt a mixture of emotions as he listened to Camilla's confession. Part of him was happy to see her experience the kind of love that brought such obvious joy to her life, while another part of him was concerned about the potential consequences of her romantic attachment to someone who might not be considered suitable by the royal court. "Your Highness," Marcus said carefully, "love is a precious gift that should be treasured and protected. However, I also understand that your position as a princess brings certain responsibilities and expectations that can sometimes conflict with personal desires." "That is exactly what frightens me," Camilla admitted, her voice breaking slightly. "I know that my father expects me to marry someone who will strengthen our kingdom's political alliances and economic interests. But how can I marry someone I do not love when I have experienced what true love actually feels like?" Marcus found himself facing the most challenging moment of his career as he looked into the princess's troubled eyes. He wanted to comfort her and support her quest for happiness, but he also knew that his duty to the crown required him to consider the broader implications of her romantic choices. The secret he had been carrying for days was now being shared openly by the princess herself, creating a situation that would require careful handling and difficult decisions. As Princess Camilla waited for Marcus's response to her heartfelt confession, the sound of approaching footsteps on the gravel path interrupted their private conversation. Both of them turned to see Sir Edmund Blackwood walking toward them with purposeful strides, accompanied by two younger guards whom Marcus recognized as members of the palace intelligence unit. "Your Highness, Captain Rodriguez," Sir Edmund said with a formal bow, though his expression remained serious and businesslike. "I apologize for interrupting your conversation, but there is an urgent matter that requires immediate attention." Princess Camilla composed herself quickly, transforming from a vulnerable young woman seeking guidance into the poised royal figure that palace protocol demanded. However, Marcus could see the worry in her eyes as she wondered whether their conversation had been overheard, or if Sir Edmund's appearance was related to other concerns. "What matter requires such urgency?" "Sir Edmund?" Camilla asked with calm authority, though Marcus noticed the slight tension in her voice. "Your Highness, we have received credible reports of unauthorized individuals gaining access to restricted areas of the palace during nighttime hours," Sir Edmund replied, his gaze moving between Camilla and Marcus. "His Majesty has ordered a comprehensive security review and investigation to ensure the safety of all royal family members." Marcus felt his blood run cold as he realized the implications of Sir Edmund's announcement. The investigation would likely include detailed questioning of palace staff, examination of guard schedules and patrol routes, and potentially even searches of private chambers. If the relationship between Princess Camilla and Thomas Whitmore was discovered during such an investigation, the consequences would be severe for everyone involved. "I see," Camilla said, maintaining her composed exterior despite what Marcus suspected was growing panic beneath the surface. "Of course, the safety of the royal family must be the highest priority. I trust that Captain Rodriguez and his guards will conduct a thorough investigation and take whatever measures are necessary to secure the palace." Sir Edmund's sharp eyes fixed on Marcus with uncomfortable intensity. "Captain, His Majesty expects a detailed report on your findings within 48 hours. This investigation should include interviews with all palace staff who work in the royal wing, examination of entry and exit logs, and a complete review of security protocols during evening and nighttime hours." "Understood, Sir Edmund," Marcus replied, his mind racing as he considered how to handle the investigation in a way that might protect Princess Camilla while still fulfilling his professional obligations. I will begin the investigation immediately and ensure that every aspect of palace security is thoroughly examined. After Sir Edmund and his companions departed, Princess Camilla and Marcus found themselves alone again. But the mood of their conversation had changed dramatically. The princess's earlier vulnerability had been replaced by a mixture of fear and determination that Marcus found both admirable and concerning. "Captain, I believe you understand the gravity of the situation we now face," Camilla said quietly, ensuring that their words would not carry beyond their immediate vicinity. "The investigation that Sir Edmund has ordered will likely uncover things that some people would prefer to remain hidden." Marcus nodded grimly, realizing that the princess was essentially acknowledging that she understood the investigation might reveal her secret relationship. "Your Highness, I want you to know that I will conduct this investigation with the utmost professionalism and discretion. However, I must also be honest with you about the challenges we face." "I appreciate your honesty, Captain. It is one of the qualities I have always admired about you," Camilla replied. "May I ask for your advice on how to handle a situation that could potentially bring difficulty to people I care about?" The princess's request put Marcus in an impossible position. As captain of the guard, he was supposed to be conducting an impartial investigation that would uncover any security breaches regardless of who might be involved. However, his personal loyalty to Princess Camilla and his genuine concern for her well-being made him want to find a way to protect her from the consequences of her romantic choices. "Your Highness, the most important thing right now is to ensure that no one else gets hurt by decisions that have already been made," Marcus said carefully. "Sometimes the best way to protect the people we care about is to make difficult choices that prioritize their long-term safety and happiness over our immediate desires." Camilla studied Marcus's face intently, trying to read the meaning behind his diplomatically worded advice. "Are you suggesting that I should end my relationship with the person I love in order to prevent further complications?" The direct question forced Marcus to confront the reality of what he was recommending. He knew that ending her relationship with Thomas Whitmore would cause Princess Camilla significant emotional pain, but he also understood that continuing the secret romance would likely lead to even more serious consequences for everyone involved. "Your Highness, I cannot make such a personal decision for you," Marcus replied. "However, I can tell you that the investigation Sir Edmund has ordered will be very thorough, and it will be difficult to keep any secrets hidden for much longer. Whatever decision you make, it should be made quickly, and with full consideration of all possible outcomes." That evening, as Marcus began his investigation by interviewing palace staff and reviewing security logs, he struggled with the knowledge that he was essentially gathering evidence that could destroy Princess Camilla's happiness. Each conversation with servants and guards brought him closer to confirming what he already knew about the secret meetings in Camilla's chambers. Elena, the young maid who had seemed so nervous several days earlier, was particularly difficult to interview. When Marcus questioned her about unusual activities in the royal wing, she became visibly distressed and gave contradictory answers that clearly indicated she was hiding something important. "Elena, I need you to understand that this investigation is about ensuring the safety of the royal family," Marcus said gently, trying to encourage her cooperation without being intimidating. "If you have information about anything unusual you have observed, it is important that you share it with me." "Captain Rodriguez, I don't want to get anyone in trouble," Elena replied, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "There are things I have seen that I'm not sure I should talk about, and I'm afraid of what might happen if I say the wrong thing." Marcus felt sympathy for the young woman's predicament, understanding that she was caught between her loyalty to Princess Camilla and her obligation to cooperate with the official investigation. The servant network in the palace often developed strong personal attachments to the royal family members they served, making situations like this particularly painful for everyone involved. As the evening progressed and Marcus continued gathering information, he realized that he was approaching a point where he would have to make a decision that would affect not only his own career and reputation, but also the lives of Princess Camilla, Thomas Whitmore, and potentially the political stability of the entire kingdom. The weight of this responsibility was unlike anything he had faced in his 15 years of service to the crown. The second day of Marcus's investigation brought developments that he had hoped to avoid, but had expected nonetheless. Early in the morning, one of his most trusted guards, Sergeant William Hayes, approached him with information that would make it impossible to continue protecting Princess Camilla's secret. "Captain, I need to report something that I observed during my patrol last night," Sergeant Hayes said with obvious reluctance. "I witnessed an unauthorized individual leaving the royal wing at approximately 11:30 in the evening." Marcus felt his heart sink as he realized that the investigation was uncovering exactly what Sir Edmund had suspected. Sergeant Hayes was known for his integrity and attention to detail, making it unlikely that his observations were mistaken or exaggerated. "Please provide me with a detailed account of what you witnessed, Sergeant," Marcus said, maintaining his professional demeanor despite his personal concerns about the implications of this report. "I was conducting my regular patrol of the East Corridor when I observed a well-dressed man exiting from the direction of Princess Camilla's chambers," Hayes continued. "He appeared to be familiar with the palace layout and moved with confidence, suggesting that this was not his first visit to the area. When he noticed my presence, he quickly disappeared around a corner before I could approach him for identification." Marcus knew that he could no longer delay taking official action based on the mounting evidence of security breaches in the royal wing. However, he also realized that he might have one final opportunity to warn Princess Camilla about the serious nature of the situation before being forced to report his findings to Sir Edmund and ultimately to the king. "Thank you for your report, Sergeant Hayes," Marcus said. "Please document your observations in writing and ensure that the night patrol schedules are adjusted to provide additional coverage of the royal wing during evening hours." After Sergeant Hayes departed, Marcus sat alone in his office, staring at the growing pile of reports and testimonies that painted a clear picture of Princess Camilla's secret relationship. He knew that within hours he would need to present his findings to Sir Edmund, and there would be no way to avoid revealing the truth about the unauthorized visits to the princess's chambers. Marcus decided that he needed to speak with Princess Camilla one final time before submitting his report. He wanted to give her the opportunity to prepare for the consequences that would inevitably follow, and perhaps to offer her a chance to control how the truth was revealed, rather than having it discovered through the formal investigation process. He found Princess Camilla in the palace library, sitting at a reading table with several books open before her, though it was clear that her attention was not focused on her studies. When she saw Marcus approaching, her face immediately showed the strain and worry that she had been trying to hide from others in the palace. "Captain Rodriguez," she said quietly, glancing around to ensure they were alone in the large room. "I have been expecting you. I assume your investigation has uncovered information that you need to discuss with me." Marcus took a seat across from her at the reading table, noting the dark circles under her eyes and the pallor of her complexion that indicated she had been sleeping poorly and eating little. The stress of maintaining her secret while knowing that an investigation was underway was clearly taking a severe toll on her physical and emotional well-being. "Your Highness, I will not insult your intelligence by pretending that my investigation has not revealed certain facts about activities in the royal wing," Marcus said gently. "I believe you understand that I can no longer delay reporting my findings to Sir Edmund and His Majesty." Princess Camilla closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, Marcus could see that she had accepted the inevitable conclusion of their situation. "How much time do I have before you must submit your report?" "I am required to present my findings to Sir Edmund tomorrow morning," Marcus replied. "Your Highness, I want you to know that I will do everything within my power to present the information in a way that emphasizes the absence of any actual security threat to the royal family, while being honest about what has been discovered." "Thank you, Captain. Your loyalty and kindness mean more to me than you can possibly know," Camilla said, her voice breaking slightly with emotion. "I want you to understand that everything Thomas and I have done has been motivated by genuine love and respect for each other. We never intended to create problems for the kingdom or to put anyone else at risk." Marcus felt moved by the sincerity and pain in her voice, remembering his own experience with deep love and the devastating loss he had endured when his wife died. He understood better than most people the precious nature of genuine affection and the tragedy of losing someone who brought meaning and joy to life. "Your Highness, I have no doubt about the authenticity of your feelings or those of Lord Thomas Whitmore," Marcus said, revealing that his investigation had identified her romantic partner. However, I must also help you understand the serious consequences that this relationship may have for your future and for the political stability of the kingdom. Camilla looked surprised that Marcus knew Thomas's identity, but she also seemed relieved that the complete truth was finally out in the open. What do you believe will happen when my father learns about our relationship? Marcus considered his response carefully, wanting to be honest while not causing unnecessary additional distress. His Majesty will likely be concerned about the political implications of an unauthorized romantic relationship involving a member of the royal family. There may also be questions about how long this relationship has been ongoing, and whether it has affected any negotiations regarding potential marriage alliances with other kingdoms. And what about Thomas? Camilla asked, her voice filled with worry for her beloved's safety and well-being. He is innocent of any wrongdoing except for loving me. I could not bear it if he were to suffer serious consequences because of feelings that we could not control. Lord Thomas's fate will largely depend on how the situation is handled and what decisions are made about your future, Marcus replied honestly. If the relationship is seen as a temporary indiscretion that can be ended without lasting consequences, he may face relatively minor punishment. However, if it is viewed as a serious threat to royal protocol and kingdom security, the consequences could be much more severe. Princess Camilla was quiet for several minutes, clearly thinking through the limited options available to her. When she finally spoke again, her voice carried a resolution and maturity that impressed Marcus despite the circumstances. Captain, I need to ask for your advice one final time, she said. If you were in my position, knowing what you know about the consequences we face, what would you do to protect the person you love, while also fulfilling your responsibilities to your family and kingdom? The question struck Marcus deeply, forcing him to consider what he might have done if he had been faced with a choice between his duty and his love for his wife. The complexity of Princess Camilla's situation made any easy answers impossible, but Marcus knew that she deserved his honest thoughts about the difficult decision she faced. Marcus looked into Princess Camilla's eyes and saw the same courage and determination that had impressed him when she was just a child learning to hold a sword. Despite the fear and uncertainty of her situation, she was prepared to face whatever consequences awaited her with dignity and strength. Your Highness, if I were in your position, I would consider taking control of the situation by being the first to speak honestly with His Majesty about your relationship, Marcus said after careful consideration. Sometimes approaching difficult conversations with honesty and humility can lead to better outcomes than waiting for others to discover and reveal the truth. Camilla nodded thoughtfully, understanding the wisdom in his suggestion. You believe that if I confess everything to my father before your investigation is complete, it might demonstrate my respect for his authority and my willingness to accept responsibility for my choices? It is possible that such an approach could influence how the situation is handled, Marcus replied. His Majesty has always shown great love for you, and he might be more inclined toward understanding and forgiveness if you come to him voluntarily rather than being confronted with evidence discovered by others. The princess stood up from the reading table and walked to one of the tall windows that overlooked the palace gardens. Marcus could see her looking toward the rose garden where she and Thomas had likely shared many romantic moments during their secret courtship. Captain, there is something else I need to tell you, Camilla said without turning away from the window. Thomas and I have discussed the possibility of leaving the kingdom together if our relationship becomes impossible to maintain here. We have talked about starting a new life in a distant land where we could be together without causing political complications for my family. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the full extent of what Princess Camilla was considering. If she chose to leave the kingdom with Thomas Whitmore, it would create a scandal that could damage the royal family's reputation and potentially affect diplomatic relationships with other nations. However, he also understood that for someone experiencing genuine love, the prospect of exile might seem preferable to a life without their beloved. Your Highness, I must caution you to consider such a decision very carefully, Marcus said. Leaving your family and your kingdom would mean giving up everything you have known and loved, beyond your relationship with Lord Thomas. You would also be unable to return, and you would have no guarantee of safety or security in foreign lands. I understand the risks, Captain, but I also understand what it feels like to contemplate a future without the person who has become the most important part of my life, Camilla replied, her voice heavy with emotion. Perhaps you, having experienced the loss of someone you loved deeply, can understand why the thought of living without Thomas seems unbearable. Marcus was moved by her reference to his own loss and her understanding of the pain that comes with losing someone precious. However, he also felt compelled to help her see that her situation, while difficult, was not hopeless in the way that his had been when death took his wife and unborn child. Your Highness, I do understand the depth of love you are describing, but I also want you to consider that there might be alternatives to the extreme choices of either ending your relationship completely or leaving your kingdom forever, Marcus said. Perhaps there are ways to find a solution that allows for both love and duty to coexist. Camilla turned from the window to face Marcus directly, and he could see hope flickering in her eyes despite her distress. What kind of alternatives do you think might be possible? Lord Thomas Whitmore comes from a noble family with a long history of loyalty to the crown, Marcus said thoughtfully. While he may not be the heir to his father's estates, he is still a person of good character and respectable background. It is possible that His Majesty might be willing to consider a marriage that, while not providing the same political advantages as an alliance with a foreign kingdom, would not bring shame or dishonor to the royal family. The suggestion seemed to surprise Princess Camilla, as if she had become so focused on the obstacles to her relationship that she had not considered the possibility that those obstacles might be overcome through negotiation and compromise, rather than secrecy or exile. Do you truly think my father might accept Thomas as a suitable husband for me? She asked, her voice filled with cautious hope. I cannot predict His Majesty's reaction with certainty, Marcus replied honestly. However, I do know that he loves you deeply and wants you to be happy. If you approach him with honesty about your feelings and demonstrate your willingness to consider the needs of the kingdom, alongside your personal desires, he might be more receptive than you expect. That evening, as Marcus prepared to finalize his investigation report, he decided to take an unprecedented step that reflected his loyalty to Princess Camilla and his belief in the power of truth and honesty to resolve difficult situations. Instead of simply presenting the facts he had discovered about the security breaches, he decided to include a personal recommendation based on his years of experience and his observations of the people involved. In his report to Sir Edmund, Marcus documented all of the evidence he had gathered about unauthorized access to the royal wing and the identity of the individual responsible for these security breaches. However, he also included a detailed assessment of Lord Thomas Whitmore's character and background, emphasizing his family's loyalty to the crown and his potential suitability as a marriage partner for Princess Camilla. Marcus wrote that while the secret nature of the relationship had created security concerns that needed to be addressed, the individuals involved had demonstrated genuine affection and respect for each other, and that Lord Thomas had shown no signs of having ulterior motives or intentions that might threaten the royal family or the kingdom. He recommended that the situation be handled through direct communication between His Majesty and Princess Camilla, rather than through punishment or forced separation. As he sealed the report and prepared to deliver it to Sir Edmund the following morning, Marcus reflected on the risks he was taking by advocating for Princess Camilla's happiness, rather than simply presenting the facts without interpretation or recommendation. His career and reputation could be damaged if his approach was seen as overstepping his authority, or allowing personal feelings to influence his professional judgment. However, Marcus also remembered the kindness Princess Camilla had shown him during his darkest period of grief, and he felt that his loyalty to her and his belief in the importance of love and human happiness justified the risks he was taking. Sometimes, he believed, doing the right thing required courage to go beyond the minimum requirements of duty and protocol. The next morning would bring the moment of truth when Sir Edmund received his report and decided how to present the information to King Edward. Marcus could only hope that his faith in the power of honesty and his assessment of the king's love for his daughter would prove to be well-founded. The morning of reckoning arrived with gray clouds hanging low over Elderwood Palace, creating an atmosphere that seemed to reflect the tension and uncertainty that filled the royal household. Marcus delivered his report to Sir Edmund at precisely 8 o'clock, and within an hour, he was summoned to appear before King Edward in the royal study. As Marcus walked through the corridors toward the king's private chambers, he encountered Princess Camilla in the hallway. She was dressed in a formal gown of deep purple silk, and her hair was arranged in an elaborate style that suggested she was preparing for an important occasion. When their eyes met, she gave him a small nod of acknowledgement that conveyed both gratitude and determination. "Captain Rodriguez," she said quietly as they passed each other, "thank you for everything you have done. Whatever happens today, I want you to know that your friendship and loyalty have meant more to me than I can express." Marcus bowed respectfully, understanding that Princess Camilla had decided to follow his advice and speak honestly with her father about her relationship with Thomas Whitmore. "Your Highness, I wish you strength and wisdom for the conversation ahead." When Marcus arrived at the royal study, he found King Edward seated behind an imposing oak desk, with Sir Edmund standing nearby holding the investigation report. The king was a man in his early 60s with silver hair and intelligent brown eyes that had seen decades of political challenges and family responsibilities. Despite his age, he maintained the bearing and presence of someone accustomed to wielding authority and making difficult decisions. "Captain Rodriguez, please be seated," King Edward said, gesturing to a chair positioned in front of his desk. "Sir Edmund has shared your investigation report with me, and I must say that I find both your findings and your recommendations to be quite remarkable." Marcus felt his heart rate increase as he tried to read the king's expression and tone of voice. King Edward appeared calm and thoughtful rather than angry, which Marcus hoped might be a positive sign for the outcome of this meeting. "Your Majesty, I have attempted to present a complete and honest assessment of the situation, including both the security concerns that were discovered and the personal circumstances that led to those concerns," Marcus said carefully. "Indeed, you have," King Edward replied, picking up the report and scanning through several pages. "You have documented clear evidence of unauthorized access to my daughter's chambers by Lord Thomas Whitmore. But you have also provided a character assessment that suggests this young man's intentions toward Princess Camilla are honorable and sincere." Sir Edmund stepped forward with a stern expression that indicated his disagreement with Marcus's approach to the investigation. "Your Majesty, while Captain Rodriguez has conducted a thorough investigation of the security breaches, I believe his personal sympathies may have influenced his interpretation of the evidence and his recommendations for handling this situation." King Edward raised his hand in a gesture that indicated Sir Edmund should remain silent while he continued his conversation with Marcus. "Captain, I am particularly interested in your assessment that Lord Thomas Whitmore would be a suitable marriage partner for my daughter, despite the fact that he is not heir to his father's estates and cannot offer the same political advantages as potential suitors from other kingdoms." "Your Majesty, I based that assessment on several factors," Marcus replied, feeling more confident as he sensed that the king was genuinely interested in his perspective, rather than simply preparing to punish him for overstepping his authority. "Lord Thomas comes from a family with a long history of loyalty to the crown. He has received an excellent education, and my observations suggest that he genuinely loves and respects Princess Camilla. While this marriage might not provide immediate political benefits, it could ensure your daughter's happiness and emotional well-being." King Edward was quiet for several minutes, apparently considering Marcus's words carefully. When he finally spoke again, his voice carried a mixture of sadness and resignation that suggested he had been wrestling with difficult decisions about his daughter's future. "Captain Rodriguez, I have been a king for 35 years, but I have been a father for 25 years," King Edward said thoughtfully. "Sometimes these two roles create conflicts that are not easily resolved. As a king, I must consider the political and economic benefits that royal marriages can provide to our kingdom. As a father, I want my daughter to experience the joy and fulfillment that comes from being truly loved and cherished by her husband." At that moment, there was a soft knock on the study door, and King Edward called for the visitor to enter. Princess Camilla appeared in the doorway, her composure intact but her nervousness evident in the slight tremor of her hands. "Father, I would like to speak with you about a matter of great importance," Camilla said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the conversation she was about to initiate. "Please join us, my dear," King Edward said warmly, his expression softening as he looked at his youngest daughter. "I believe I know what you wish to discuss, and I think it would be beneficial for Captain Rodriguez to remain present, as his investigation has provided valuable insights into your situation. Princess Camilla took a seat next to Marcus, and he could sense both her courage and her fear as she prepared to reveal the truth about her secret relationship. Father, I need to confess that I have been meeting secretly with someone who has captured my heart completely. I know that my behavior has violated palace protocol and created security concerns, but I want you to understand that our feelings for each other are genuine and deep. King Edward leaned back in his chair, studying his daughter's face with the same careful attention he gave to important state documents. Tell me about this young man who has won your affection, Camilla. I want to understand what makes him special enough to risk everything for. Over the next hour, Princess Camilla spoke eloquently about her relationship with Thomas Whitmore, describing how they had met during a social gathering at Lord Christopher Whitmore's estate, how their friendship had gradually developed into love, and how they had struggled with the knowledge that their relationship might not be acceptable to the royal court. She spoke of Thomas's intelligence, his kindness, his respect for her opinions and independence, and his understanding of the responsibilities that came with her royal position. King Edward listened without interruption, occasionally asking thoughtful questions that demonstrated his genuine interest in understanding his daughter's feelings and the character of the man she loved. Marcus was impressed by the king's patience and his obvious desire to find a solution that would honor both his duties as a monarch and his love for his daughter. Camilla, I want you to know that your happiness has always been one of my greatest concerns as your father, King Edward said finally. However, I also need you to understand the challenges that your choice of romantic partner creates for our kingdom's diplomatic relationships and strategic alliances. I understand those challenges, Father, and I am prepared to accept whatever consequences my choices may bring, Camilla replied with quiet dignity, but I also hope that you might consider the possibility that love and duty do not always have to be in conflict with each other. King Edward was quiet for a long moment before turning to Marcus with an unexpected question. Captain Rodriguez, based on your observations and your knowledge of Lord Thomas Whitmore's family, do you believe this young man would be willing to take on additional responsibilities that might make him a more valuable ally to our kingdom? Marcus felt surprised by the question but recognized that the king might be considering ways to make Thomas Whitmore a more politically advantageous marriage partner for Princess Camilla. Your Majesty, I believe Lord Thomas would be honored to serve the kingdom in any capacity where his talents and dedication could be useful. In that case, King Edward said with a slight smile, I think it is time for me to meet this young man who has captured my daughter's heart. Sir Edmund, please arrange for Lord Thomas Whitmore to be invited to dinner at the palace tomorrow evening. I believe it is time for us to discuss the future openly and honestly. Princess. Camilla's face lit up with joy and relief as she realized that her father was not rejecting her relationship but instead was willing to explore possibilities for making it work within the constraints of royal protocol and kingdom responsibilities. Marcus felt a deep sense of satisfaction and gratitude as he witnessed the reunion of trust and understanding between father and daughter. The story concluded with the understanding that while challenges remained ahead, love, honesty, and mutual respect had created an opportunity for Princess Camilla and Thomas Whitmore to build a future together that honored both their personal happiness and their duties to the kingdom. Marcus had learned that sometimes the greatest service to duty comes not from blind obedience to protocol, but from the courage to advocate for what is right and just, even when it requires taking personal risks for the sake of others' well-being.